I said, yes, I'd work there and maybe get the repairs done on the car a bit cheaper. And one day we were sitting there in the office having lunch, and Harold said to me, "You go dancing?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Would you like to take my sister to a ball?" So I hummed and hawed a little bit. I said, "Well, I'll have to see her in a bikini."
Did they have bikinis then?
Yes, or a swimsuit. I'd have to see her in a swimsuit before I say yes or
Now
no.
they're topless in a G-string.
That's right. A piece of cord.
If only it were today.
And so the following day, Harold came with an envelope. So I opened the envelope and it had a little message in the envelope saying, "Sorry, I haven't got a photo of myself in a swimsuit, but this is the best I could do." And it was Enid in a pair of shorts, tennis shorts.
Have you still got the photo?
No, I carried it around my wallet, but after sitting on it for so many years, it just disintegrated.
I've heard of under the thumb, but that's ridiculous.
That's right, under the bum. So, looking at the photo, I thought, oh well, she's not too bad.
Oh.
She'll do for a one-night stand.
Oh, crushed glass sandwiches for you tomorrow.
But I had to make sure because before we went to the dance, which was a ball at Ipswich, at Crib and Foots, I had to make sure, that she'd be quite satisfactory to me. I asked her would she go to the pictures down at Toowong, and she agreed. And we sat there in the pictures, and her hand came wriggling over towards my leg.
In your dreams.
Now I decided that she was a very nice girl, and we went steady from then on.
Yeah, up until today.
Yes.
And she's going to give you crushed glass sandwiches for breakfast. For being so cheeky.
So after we were married, as I said earlier, after that short break and a whiskey or two, we'll get back to my earlier days as a child. As I said, we lived in Musgrave Road in Indooroopilly. 18 months later came a brother, Bill. Later on, another brother, Ron. We moved from the Musgrave Road to Russell Terrace, and then from Russell Terrace to Finney Road, and my mother had another daughter, and after that she had another daughter, Shelley and Leslie. So there's 3 boys and 2 girls.
And who did they get married to?
Well, Billy married Mary.
And did they have any children?
Yes, a boy and a girl.
And
Tony and Michelle. And Ronnie married Jan. They had a boy and a girl, Simon, Andrew and Samantha. Shelley married Tony Crane, who had a boy and a girl, Simon and Nicole. And Leslie married a chap, Chris Mitchelson, who had 2 daughters. I just have to check up on their names. Christina and
Linda.
Linda.
And Michelle's just had a baby, hasn't she?
Yes, a baby girl.
Named
I forget.
Ashley.
Ashley.
And Tony's got a little boy, hasn't he?
How did you used to get along as kids?
Well, as a family, in those days, it was just after the Depression, during the war, or before the war, and the war came along in 1939. As I said earlier, we had ration cards. You couldn't buy ice cream, you couldn't buy chocolates, you couldn't
wouldn't
buy
notice
anything
that.
else. That's
Oh.
right. And there was a lot of bush in those days. The population of Australia, I think, was only 3 million people. We walked to school. I said earlier we went to Indooroopilly School, but during the war, Indooroopilly was in the metropolitan area, so we had to walk to Kenmore, which was turned out in the a bush school in those days. And we used to amuse ourselves at weekends by going bushwalking, making shanghais, shooting birds with the shanghais, getting in an old tank, rolling it up the hill, and then getting in the tank and rolling it down the hill with us in it. I'll never forget one day we were on the river. There was Billy and a few of our mates. We used, as I said, during the war, the Yanks had a hospital around at Nudgee Junior College, and we used to go around there and bump cigarettes off them.
Oh.
And one Yank gave one of our mates to Bob Kenny Turner to come home and tell our parents that we were smoking. So he did. So when I got home, Mum wanted to know where I was, and I told her. She said, yes, smoking. So I got a hiding from her, and then when my father came home, I got a belting from him. I tell you what, Kenny Turner didn't get any cigarettes after that. But we used to go and get on this boat or launch that was moored up to a wharf on the river. And we used to smoke cigarettes in the cabin of this boat. And one day when we got up on the deck, here we are floating down the river, just hanging by one rope. One of the boat sparks undid all the ropes, and he couldn't undo this particular one. So lucky he didn't. Otherwise, we could have finished up down the mouth of the river. But we used to have a lot of enjoyment on the river, in the canoe. As I said, Ronnie, my younger brother, I fished him out of the river. He wanted to go in the canoe one day and he fell out and he couldn't swim, and the current was pushing him downstream. I had to jump in and grab him. An uncle of mine, George, he used to work on the river. Before the Indooroopilly Tower Bridge was built, there used to be a barge going across there, and this George was working on the river, working on the barge, and he fell overboard. And 3 years after, they fished his body out, and I'm named after him, Colin George. That's enough.
I'm Irisina Ethel Clarkson. I was born in Borden Street, Bundaberg, and my parents, are Arthur and Ethel Clayton. my father passed away 35 years ago, and my mother 22 years ago.
How did you feel when your father passed away? Were you very attached to him?
Yes, I was extremely attached to my father. I couldn't handle it at all, and had a nervous breakdown. He was an excellent father, and we were very close. When I was born, we lived at a place called Oakwood, 4 miles north of Bundaberg, and spent some years there before my father bought a property on the Callan River, 15 miles north of Bundaberg. I had 3 sisters and a brother, and my brother and I were educated by a governess because we were too far away from a school. My brother's name is Harold, and my sisters are Ivy, Mona and Essie. Ivy and Mona never married and live in the street next to us. My sister Essie married Jack Russell and lives at Wallangarra and has a son called Howard. My brother married, Elvie, and they have 3 children, David, Mark and Judith. David married Linda, and they have 2 children, Amanda and Christopher. And Judith married John, and they have 2 sons, Matthew and Nathan.
And when did you actually come to Brisbane?
How
many years ago?
We came to Brisbane in 1949, and I started work in Cribbenfoot in 1950.
And what did you do in Cribbenfoot?
I worked in the showroom. My father had a dairy farm, and we used to milk 147 cows morning and night by hand. As a 6-year-old, I was introduced to the cow yard and learned to milk as good as any of the men. Then we would have to feed about 70 calves night and morning, plus feed pigs and look after other things. And at the weekend, we would help our parents pick corn or potatoes or whatever on the farm. This was when the war started and the men had to go. I had many pets on the farm, particularly cats and dogs. And I had a little baby calf that my father found that weighed only 5 pounds. And I reared her till she was 19 weeks old when another cow gored her, and it broke my heart to lose her. We had many problems with snakes that used to get under our bed and throw my mother into a fit.
What about, wasn't Harold asleep on the veranda one day?
Yes, my mother went out one day and my brother was asleep in his cot to find a 6-foot black snake curled up underneath it.
What did you do?
She called Dad and he killed it. He would kill on an average of 3 or 4 snakes a day with a bamboo stick. Goannas were also very bad, and my mother took 6 shots at one day and missed the whole lot, so then the goanna walked off unharmed. They used to take all the eggs. We had many fowls on the farm that we also had to look after.
What was the average meal like on the farm?
Back as in the Depression days in the early 30s, I believe that my parents had little or no money. We would cut bean stalks, the shoots of bean stalks from the vine up as beans. Our meal from school would be bread and dripping with salt and pepper on it. We never went hungry, thanks to my mother, but the meals were very plain.
Pumpkin stalks too.
Yes, anything to give us greens. My mother worked very hard to see that we were always adequately fed, if not, the best of food. What else?
Did you get along well with your sisters and your brother?
Yes, I did. We all got along well. I had wonderful parents. My brother and I were always very close. Can't think of anything else.
What about when you're out milking cows? Any funny stories? Did you used to feed the cats when they came along?
The cats used to just take their own food out of the milk as the separator was going to separate the milk. So because we sell cream, my dad would have to drive 15 miles into Bundaberg with the cream 3 times a week. My mother got bogged in the cow yard one day bringing cows into milk, and Dad had to get a shovel and dig her out, which he couldn't do for laughing. I used to do my homework up in a tree in the calf paddock so as I could play with the calves at the same time.
How much schooling did you actually have?
Well, it came by correspondence from Brisbane, and the governess gave it to us. We had a special room set up as a school room, but the schooling had to take second place to the work when the war came.
And how long were you on the farm for?
Heavens, I can't remember that one. I think approximately 12 years. And then my parents bought a business in Ipswich, a mixed business that they and my sisters looked after, and I went to work in Crib and Foot in the showroom.
How old were you then?
Around the 16 mark. I worked there for 18 months in the showroom, and then I was transferred to the corset department, where I met many and varied sizes, shapes, descriptions.
And how much did you get in wages back then?
I can't remember exactly, but it wasn't very much.
How much were a pair of stockings?
A pair of stockings was 25 shillings each, and a hickory bra was 23 and 6.
That's very expensive.
And I bought a ball frock that cost £25, and I had to save all my wages up for 2 months to get it.
Gosh.
So,
And what about a pair of shoes? How much would they cost, an average pair of shoes that you'd wear to work?
I can't remember how much the shoes cost, but they would have been around £5 or £6 each.
Very expensive.
They were. Things were very expensive then. But we wouldn't wear a ladder in our stocking, irrespective of the price. So
And how long were you in that business?
I worked in Crib and Foot for 6.5 years,
How-
up until we got married.
And your father passed away while you were at the store?
Yes, he did. He passed away in 1952, and my mother in 1965.
Was your mother a well person?
Not in the latter years. She used to get asthma, and she wasn't very well. my father died of a heart attack in the night and we found him gone in the morning. My mother also died of a heart attack. What else would you like?
And what happened after then? You
Well-
were suddenly left on your own, or
No.
after your mother had passed away?
No, I was married when my mother passed away. I met Col in the December.
Well, what's your version of how you met?
I was going with a gentleman who was a traveller for Hickory Bras and was in Melbourne when the staff party came up, and I asked my brother if he had anything eligible that would take me to the dance. And he told me that he did have a young man there, and asked him, who was Cole, and as he told you, he wanted a photo, and he eventually took me to the dance, and we continued going out.
Did you think that was pretty cheeky to want a photo of you?
I thought it was very cheeky.
And did you want a photo of him?
No, I didn't bother because I was only going to have him for the dance, so I didn't
Oh,
worry.
you only wanted a one night stand
Yes.
too.
This was in December of 1955. We were engaged in April 1956 and married in October of 56. We were married in Christchurch, Milton. We were married on the 20th of October 1956, and our attendants were Bessie Purvis and Cole's sister Shelley, and Cole's brother Bill was best man, and his friend Brian Crabb was groomsman. Our wedding, not as weddings today, was almost a disaster regarding the reception, which nobody seemed to have ready, but anyway, we survived and had a lovely time later at Cole's parents' house.
Were you nervous on the day?
Yes, very.
What about you, Mr. Clarkson?
Rosina has just said that in those days wages were very low, and we more or less, well, Enid, she organised the wedding reception and paid for the lot. Our honeymoon was the weekend at the Regatta Hotel.
We went back on Monday morning to a home we'd bought in Irwin Terrace, Oxley, for £2,500. The electricity hadn't been connected, so we spent several days or nights in the dark until they finally connected the electricity. Col was earning around £12 a week.
Where was he working?
For my brother at the garage at that time. Our repayments on the home were £3 a week. In a few months he joined the Indooroopilly toll bridge.
No, before that I left Harold's garage, and for about 3 years I worked for the Brisbane Cash and Carry, the grocer's chain. I started off in the store, in their warehouse, then as a truck driver, and then into the shops. And I finished up there working in the Inala shop. to work on the Indooroopilly Tower Bridge. But just before we got married, both Enid and I decided to put so much money away each week towards a refrigerator. And when we got married, we had £100, and that £100 would only buy a second-hand Kelvinator refrigerator. So, in comparison, refrigerators are cheaper now than what they were then. And in the house, we had a bedroom suite, which we bought new, a lounge suite, and a kitchen suite. No kitchen cupboards, no curtains, no floor coverings, no concrete under the house.
What did you wash the clothes in?
The first washing day, there was an electric boiler went with the house, and I washed the sheets, and Cole had fixed an old
Hand
ringer onto the tubs, and I got the sheets stuck in it.
And broke the side out of the concrete tubs.
And finished up with the ring around the sheet in the dirt, for which our good neighbour took my sheet and put through her washing machine and restored it to white again. I went back to work at back to Finney's as a coursier, which I detested the place, and I lasted 10 days and a week's notice. I then went to Bayards and worked in their showroom, and later became buyer of the children's department up until 1950, Christmas of 1958, when we were expecting a baby, and I gave notice and left. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and I went back to work again for Harrods frock shop in Adelaide Street. Again, I couldn't stand the boss, which seems to be a failing of mine, and I only stayed there 6 weeks.
Aren't I lucky?
And I went to McAnease as a coursier, where I worked until a few months before Graham, our eldest son, was born. I stayed home then, and in 2 years our second son, Ross, was born.
How did you cope with the first? Was he a good baby?
No, Graham wasn't a good baby. He slept all day and screamed all night.
We even had to take him for a ride every night to put him to sleep in the car.
What about
What
Ross?
type of car did you have? What type of car?
Oh, and that particular time we had a Holden utility.
Was Ross a good baby?
Yes, Ross was a good baby. Graham was £8 4 ounces when he was born. Ross was £8 13 ounces. They were both born in the Women's Hospital in Brisbane. And the next day with Ross, I was allowed to come to the maternity hospital at Corinda with him, so as Cole could bring Graham up every day, and I had to try and give him his food because he fretted and wouldn't eat.
Were the kids pretty when they were born?
Well, I think Graham, when I first saw Graham, he just looked like a frizzled up monkey. And Ross, he was the opposite. He just looked like a big baboon.
I thought they were beautiful, and particularly when Ross was 6 weeks old. From then on, he was absolutely gorgeous. He had lovely eyes with dark eyelashes, all the nurses took him all over the hospital before he was an hour old to show off his
Did
eyes.
he bat his eyelids at all the ladies back then? I bet he did.
Um,
You don't
probably,
like that?
probably. I thought they were wonderful. Yes, they were. They were very good children.
But working on the toll bridge, that was shift work, which was 7 days a week, 6 hours a day. That gave me time at home, so I started French polishing at home, and by having virtually the 2 jobs and a good banker, we saved our money and were able to buy a block of land up here in Durack, and later on build up here.
Going back to the kids, did you ever paint the garage?
Yes, well, as I said, I had quite a fair amount of time at home, and I was French polishing as a second job at home under the house firstly, which I dug out and concreted at night time, getting to bed around about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But then we built a workshop in the backyard, and Enid used to help me pull the pianos to pieces, strip all the old polish off them, mow the yard to give me more time polishing, and I just painted the house and the garage, and Enid was out shopping, and she left Ross home with me to look after. Well, the boys, they had a sand pit, and they always used to play with their toys in the sand pit, or they'd come into the workshop and I'd mix up a bit of coloured polish and they'd paint a few boards. But on this particular day, when I was supposed to be looking after Ross, he was outside the workshop painting this board, and then he seemed to be awfully quiet. So I went out to see what he was doing, but instead of painting the board, here he is painting the side of the workshop with all this coloured polish. So I warmed his backside. But Rossi was always getting into mischief. You'd never find him. He'd either be over the fence or underneath the workshop.
Did he used to go walkabouts a fair bit?
Yes, Ross ran away regularly, and Graham and I would chase him all over Oxley. His favourite hideout was under a church across the street. He'd hide behind a post so as we couldn't find him. One day I found him in a garage about 2 streets away. So his father took the front fence down to make it easier for him, and then he stayed in.
What about Graham? Did he used to like eating his boiled rice?
Did he?
He used to like eating rice pudding.
Yes, Graham wouldn't eat at all. He was a little horror to try and get to eat anything, so the only thing that he would eat was boiled rice made on milk. And this day I upended the plate of rice over his head, and his father had to take him under the house into the wash tubs and wash the rice out of his hair.
What about when Ross was a baby? Did you take him to a funeral one day?
Yes, Coles boss from the toll bridge passed away, and we went to his funeral, and Ross was only a couple of months old, and a baby that decided to throw his bottle across the room every time he was fed.
Yeah. So this particular day I got it in my shirt, in my pockets, in the cuffs of my trousers, everywhere.
And a real mess.
But from the toll bridge, when the toll finished on the bridge, I kept on polishing full time at home for 2 years, and we'd saved a little bit of money, and Enid was looking at the paper one day and she said, "Look, there's a block of land for sale in Oxley. Why don't we ring up and find out where it is and see if we can buy it?" Which she did.
Why did you want to move?
No, this wasn't to move, this is for an investment. And to our surprise, the block of land was just up around the corner in Douglas Street. And it was a big block of land with a gully through it, and the owner had approval to subdivide it into 3 blocks, provided the gully was filled with a stormwater drain. So we purchased the block of land. My father and I put the stormwater drain through it and filled the hollow, and we couldn't sell the land. In those days, spec homes were very scarce and people couldn't see the opportunities. So the land we couldn't sell it, so we decided to build a spec home, which we did, and it sold fairly readily. So we had another 2 blocks, so we built another one, and it sold fairly fast again, but we had a good agent selling that home, Enid. The agents outside, they couldn't sell it, but Enid did. So, the last remaining block, we built another home. Agents couldn't sell that one, but Enid did.
How did you,
So Enid said, "Jinx, Cole, you're such a good salesman. Why don't you go selling real estate full time?" Which I did. And I started at Ted White at Indooroopilly and moved from there to Sherwood Real Estate, and the opportunity came up and we bought Oxley Real Estate, and we were there at Oxley Real Estate for 19 years. Enid and Graham were working in the office as well. Enid was there's no need to press into my leg.
Well, hurry up. It's hot.
She was the office general manager, bookkeeper, accountant. Graham was the salesman and looked after the SGAO Building Society, which we were an agent for. You can carry on.
Is that enough?
and what about holidays? You went on a boat trip once.
Yes, we went round the islands. Ross was 10, Graham was 12. Our first port of call was Townsville, and after we left Townsville and went across the Coral Sea, Ross decided to take to his bed. He was very ill. And we went to the Solomon Islands, and he'd stagger onto land. And the moment we'd hit sea again, he'd hit his bed again. Graham only missed 2 breakfasts. He weathered it a lot better. And we'd try and carry Ross up on deck to get a bit of fresh air. He got so bad he had to have injections. By the time we got home, in 3 weeks' time, Ross was a 1.5 stone lighter. I always took them to school and met them.
What was Graham's first day at school like?
Graham was really good on his first day at school. When we left Ross, we got to the gate and turned round to find little Ross right at our heels. He'd packed up and finished before he got started. We took him back, and both him and I had a good cry, and then he stayed. I think they both enjoyed school. They had the usual pranks as boys. Ross and his mate Jeff decided to bail out early one day and got me to pick them up early, and was driving down the street when the teacher blocked the road and told them to both go back inside and pick up the papers they were supposed to be picking up. So I just had to sit there and wait until they'd done their job and finish school at the normal time to bring them home.
Were they good kids?
Yes, they were wonderful kids. They still are.
What about punishment? Did they ever get in trouble much?
With me, no. With their father occasionally.
What about one day when Ross was riding his scooter down the driveway and he fell off and you started laughing at him and he naturally rebelled and told you to shut your face and
I don't remember that.
Oh, you're upsetting your father. His eyes are watering.
Yeah.
and what did you do to him then?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I suppose I warmed your backside. I can't remember that.
Graham and Ross were swinging on a big hill swing we had in the yard one day when they were about 2 and 4, and both jumped off, with the result that Graham pulled it across Ross's neck. And I went screaming down the yard to pick him up and got the doctor to find that no damage had been done.
But they used to have Graham had a dinky, and he used to carry a chook around in the back of it.
And they both had little toy lawn mowers that they used to help mow the lawn. Now, do you think that's enough, Lo? It's getting awful hot. A year after we built in Medora Street, we put in a pool, and that day that it was finished, Col asked Graham to get some
Chlorine.
and throw in the pool. So instead of that, he got fertiliser and threw in and sent all the pool rusty.